Okay, we are live. So for those listening at home, welcome to the Live from the Sword Coast podcast. My name is Kevin Madison, and I will be your friendly dungeon muser this morning. This morning, I am continuing on with my continuing participation in the 2018 RPG-A-Day event. Bear with me one moment here. I'm going to make sure that we're actually streaming because we're on and it does appear that we are. So that is terrific. For those unfamiliar with the event, this is an exercise where every day for the month of August, we answer a different question relating to role-playing games, to the play of role-playing games, and to our relationship with them. Today's question is, which dice mechanic appeals to you? I think this is one of the... Oh, no, this is actually one of the official ones, I believe. I'm back on script here. Yes, which dice mechanic appeals to you? So for this one, so I'm getting a bit of feedback here. Maybe I'm just going to adjust the gain a little bit. There we go. Maybe that's a little better. So the question today is about what dice mechanic. And I initially was not going to answer this because I thought that yesterday's question, which was what game mechanic appeals to you, I felt that maybe that answered it. But the more I thought about it, I thought that I did have an answer I could give in relation to just dice mechanics, and it would tie into something I said at the end of yesterday's video, because yesterday I mentioned that it might be interesting to combine a narrative dice mechanic that like Star Wars has with a random element or random generation kind of thing that we see in OSR games and in Savage Worlds. Well, as soon as it got offline, I immediately realized that there is a game that kind of provides that, and that, of course, is the Conan, the Modiphius Conan 2D20 system. And so I thought I'd talk about that because that's got a really great dice mechanic that was first implemented in Mutant Chronicles the third edition role-playing game of that, and then it was adapted again for... It began to be adapted first for the Infinity role-playing game, and then Conan was announced, and then most recently, the Star Trek Adventures game uses a version of that. Actually, most recently is the John Carter role-playing game, but all of them have slight changes to how the actual rules work. But broadly speaking, each of the games, what they do is they incorporate, you use D20s to do task resolution. A starting dice pool will have 2 D20, hence the name of the system, and it can go to a maximum of 5. You never roll more than 5 D20. Sometimes you can get assistance from other people that will give you an extra dice to roll, but you yourself, you'll never be generating more than 5 dice from your own character. It's the system itself was designed by a guy named Jay Little, who was the designer of the Fantasy Flight Star Wars role-playing game, the mechanics in that, and he also had designed the previous third edition Warhammer Fantasy role-playing system, which was again based on a narrative dice system. So you can see there's a bit of an iterative growth in terms of what things that the dice do. So one of the things that I like about well, let me just explain what the system is. So what you're doing is you're looking for successes, just like in other games. You're going to roll your dice, like Shadowrun or I'm trying to think other dice pool games. Legend of Five Rings doesn't count successes; it counts your total number. But what you do is you roll your d20s, however many you've got, and you look for how many are equal to or less than the governing attribute plus the skill that you've got, and then you can score double success. You'll count 2 successes if you roll a number less than or equal to I think it's called expertise in the game. I don't have it with me, but I think that's what it's called. So what you're doing is generating a bunch of successes, and then you spend those to do what you're trying to do, and then to gain extra success. Anything in excess of that becomes something called momentum. And then you can also, so you can use the momentum to do neat things like, attack a second time or do an armor-piercing hit or whatever. And to alter, the outcome of and add to the benefit of whatever you're doing. And you can also trade off to get more dice. If you find yourself at a loss for dice, or you think it's going to be a really hard task, you can, because it requires a lot of different successes, you can trade off and give the DM something called Doom. Players have 2 different resources that they can draw on. There's I think they're called fortune points, which is like a really supercharged thing that can give you guaranteed successes and things like that. And actually, I believe it's a guaranteed 1. So if you're trained in something, it's a guaranteed 2 successes. And then you can also trade off momentum, which is continually generated. Your characters individually generate them, and then if they don't spend the momentum, it goes into what's called a momentum pool and allows other players to draw on that and do some things. So it's like, a mechanic way of reflecting that characters are, building on each other's successes or trying to set each other up for success, I suppose. And at play, it's not quite the same as the Star Wars game or the Warhammer version where there are, the multiple axes of success, but they do actually bake in some of those ideas as options in the system where you are able to succeed at cost. So if you roll a failure, but you really need to succeed, you can do that, but it'll cost something. So it's the proverbial, like leaping to another tower and then grabbing on with just your fingertips and holding on there or something like that. And you can also, so that's a success at cost, and you can or intentionally fail something as well too and generate more. I believe it's more fortune points you get for that. So there's some good, there are the same types of options, but it does put those in the hands of the players rather than leaving it to the vagaries of the dice. So it is a little bit different. In addition, the DM has something called the Doom Pool. And the Doom Pool is sort of like the DM's version of the Momentum Pool and the Fortune Pool, or the Fortune Points. So there is a bit of back and forth between the players in terms of like they are expected to draw on those dice and feed into the Doom Pool, and the DM will use those things either to usually what's best is to sort of like save them up and use them for a big bad guy. I have screwed that up before and made it, and a big bad guy was not the threat that he needed to be. But that's the dice mechanic for task resolution, for combat, for things like that. But then also in the Game Master's screen and like manual that came with it, they gave a really cool random generation for missions, and they do the same thing in, I know for certain they do in the Conan the Thief book. They give you some optional ways of generating random random missions for the characters. Oop, Emmy, it's okay, it's Grandpa. And so that way there's actually, there is a narrative dice mechanic, but there's also a narrative way of generating the mission as well too. So I guess it's not specifically a dice mechanic that I'm talking about here, but I think that the thing I like about the dice mechanic there is that in the Conan version, rather than the Star Wars one, there is a little bit of feeding opportunities to other players, but there's much more of that in the Conan game. It's much more express. Like in a Star Wars game, when you roll advantage, what you can do is you can spend some of your extra advantage to try and help out, to toss a new dice, a beneficial dice to one of your fellow players. And that's cool. I like that. But that usually ended up being kind of like I can't do anything else with this, so I'll do that. And because there were other really good, viable, and arguably more important options that you could gain with spending those dice or spending those advantage points for yourself, then it was sort of like when I've got nothing else to do, I'll do that. Momentum, on the other hand, I think really does matter. It really does provide it by being able to draw that momentum and get an extra dice for it. You can, and the max amount of dice you're going to be rolling is 5. It's a much more meaningful contribution to another player to try and get their character to succeed. So that particular dice mechanic, I really, really like. And I realize now that the randomness that I was talking about, the combination of the random story elements versus the random story elements that come from the dice rolls. That's that actually, I guess one other thing, there is Doom that's generated as well in the Conan game when you roll a 20. So rolling a 20 in the Conan game is really bad. So if you'd roll that, then there is catastrophic consequences, but you can succeed on some of your dice and then also roll that. So you could do what you're trying to do, but then there's some other kind of setback, and the DM may just like take it and throw it in their Doom Pool, or they may give an immediate reaction. And that's often what I did, is I wanted to feel that consequence right away, not like, oh, it's coming. But you can do it that way too. So so that's the dice mechanic I think that I want to talk about. That dice mechanic really appeals to me. It's been about a year since I've run Conan, or coming up on a year since I've run Conan, but I do have a session scheduled tentatively in the next month or so. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting that system again too. It was a great deal of fun to run and to prep before. And I look forward to seeing how well it has weathered or has aged, I should say, in the interim. So anyway, that's my answer for day 21. Let's take a look and see what day 22 is going to be. Day 22, man, we're getting close to the end here. Which non-dice system appeals to you? I'm gonna have to think about that because I'm not 100% sure what that's asking. I guess I don't know how that differs from the game mechanics. So maybe I'm going back to the alternate prompts, or someone actually had suggested a really good question about how to prep a session for someone who does not play role-playing games or is not interested. And I've been giving that some thought. Maybe I'll answer that tomorrow rather than dealing with that non-dice mechanic. So anyway, that's my answer for today. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding this answer, or about the RPGaDay experience in general, or if you want to talk about which dice mechanic you like, please don't hesitate to leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can shoot me a tweet on Twitter at Dungeon Musings, all one word with plural, or you can shoot me an email at dungeonmusings@gmail.com. Finally, you may notice that at the bottom of the screen, or rather the bottom of the screen, the description of the video below, we have a link to the charity fundraising campaign that we're running on the channel. This is something we're calling Heroes Save Villages. This is something where we've paired up with SOS Children's Villages International, a really terrific organization that provides both advocacy and direct assistance to children living in high-need circumstances, both in North America and elsewhere in the world. You can click through and learn more about SOS Children's Villages International and about the Heroes Save Villages campaign on the one link. And then if you want to see my reasons for setting up the campaign and my connection with SOS Children's Villages International, you can click through to the video that I shot for this as well. This is completely optional. Please don't feel obligated to contribute. But if you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, then I'd ask that you maybe just consider clicking through, learning more about the campaign, and seeing if it's something you might want to toss a couple shekels towards. So anyway, tomorrow we're back talking about, I think probably I'll do that planning one, because I think I got some stuff to say about that. Otherwise, I hope that the RPGaDay month is treating you all well. I really appreciate that. It's this whole exercise, I'm choosing to take it as something to really, to take a step back and consider how I'm running games and my relationship to games and things like that, and having other people's perspectives on how they're hearing what I'm saying and what their own relationship with these different things are, or different games and different ways we approach games, or different subsystems in games, has been really beneficial and has really got me thinking a lot and helped me prep for my the daily answers. So thanks very much to everybody who has posted a response so far, and anyone who will be for the remainder of the month. Otherwise, I have some blue skies to go and enjoy with my pooch, so I'm going to go do that. Thanks again, folks, and I'll see you again tomorrow.